Good afternoon, everybody. I hope my voice is carrying, and the device is on. Anyway, sounds fine. Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me for this splendid event here. And for the next 15-something minutes, I would like to take you on a journey here to tell the story of early man for the past 2.5 million years and the Turkish contribution of it. So, when we just look at the timeline here, should work, I hope. It doesn't. Okay. Look at the timeline here. So that's where we start our journey. 2,500,000 years before present. And this takes us back, not to Anatolia, not to Europe, but back to Africa, where the journey of early man starts, the awakening, as to say, the beginning of consciousness of bipedal gait, and it starts in the African savanna about 2.5 million years ago with the Homo erectus species, one of our very remote relatives. And see them here in state of, it's called early humanness, walking on 2 feet, being superior to other mammals in the savanna because he has a better idea of the environment. He's walking on 2 feet. He have a better scope of what's going on around, an evolutionary advantage that takes him then, in the long run, next slide, yes, here we are, from the west of Africa. The journey of man that starts in Western Africa and then leads this early species, one of our very remote relatives, all the way up to Europe. And then the question is, what's happening in what's nowadays? Yes, that's much, much better. Here we are with our 2 fellows here in the African savanna, and the journey takes them up to the northeast and the northwest from an African perspective. And the big question is now, what's going on here in your home country, in the home country of most of you? And so this takes us to about 500,000 years before present, where we have one of the key finds, one of the key fragments in the jigsaw puzzle of the journey of early man. I think very few of you, if anyone, heard about this specific site here, Kocabash, which is close to Denizli. What we have here is large travertine and marble quarries which are exploited until modern times. And here, these few fragments here, these few bits and pieces, is the first Homo erectus find in Turkey. There are no other fossil remains unearthed so far. It's a pure chance find baked in the travertine rock, and it tells us a story about what early man had to endure when the journey took him far up to the north, because this poor fellow suffered, as these few bits and pieces of bone splinters tell us, from tuberculosis, a very nasty illness, which results from, lack of vitamin intake, which finally results from a much lower solar radiation, a much lower solar, not activity, but it tells us that the skin of these early men were still pitch black to endure the heavy sunlight in the African savanna. They got adjusted to it, and this, the journey led them up to the far north. They suffered from these types of illnesses due to a lower sunlight, or to less sunlight that they were exposed to. And so the human journey had not to stop, but to adapt itself again, just to find solutions for coping with the environment. Now, a big leap ahead, another almost 500,000 years to about 10,000 BCE, where we have this crucial phase of, the end of the last Pleistocene period, the end of the Ice Age, and the beginning of what we nowadays know as the Holocene climate, the climatic setting that we find ourselves embedded. The ice sheet retreats further to the north. At that particular time, larger parts of Central and Northern Europe were still covered under a thick sheet of ice, which then slowly retreats further on to the North Pole. And this is the crucial phase when man abandons the nomadic lifestyle and starts to settle down, which is perfectly normal for us nowadays. But we have think about the fact that nomadic population nearly 10,000 years ago was still about 100% on our planet. Nowadays, it's a tiny 0.001%, even less from the world's population, which still retain a nomadic lifestyle. So this is the time when man settles down and founds a home, a house, a castle to settle in. You might ask yourself, what are the advantages of that? Actually, one has to tell you frankly, there are none. It's risky, it's very dangerous. You have to plan for the future. You have to tame the animals. You have to take care of animal husbandry, of plant domestication, and all these nice, nasty illnesses that we are dealing nowadays. Smallpox, measles, Kabakulak-Beseide. You know what I'm talking about. What are these? Well, these are original animal diseases which jumped ship exactly around 10,000 BC, when man started to dwell together with the animals. That's the heritage, and that's the fate of settling down. What is our idea about this period? Well, look here. This is the famous proverbial Fertile Crescent, parts of northern Mesopotamia and what's nowadays Turkey, where we have the earliest, the very, very earliest settlements here, where it is first tried to experience new strategies, new approaches to life, to settle down, to domesticate plants and animals. And our idea of Neolithic lifestyle until, rather recently, was that of very simply structured rural societies, small villages that were founded, small groups of people living together, low hierarchies, if any. And then, a couple of years ago, these ideas had to be turned completely upside down because someone stumbled across Göbekli Tepe. Well, it was obviously known already since the 1950s, when one of the earlier Turkish expeditions reached the site here, which is located close to Şanlıurfa, as you know, and the few scattered remains there were recognized, but no excavation was started. And when the excavation started in the 1990s, then our theories, our ideas about the early Neolithic, the early young Stone Age, when man started settling down, had to be revised completely. What we have here is a sacred area, a temple district with these beautifully carved pillars. Here you see a wild boar, and here, well, you can argue that this might be also a prototype of the beloved Turkish simit, what you see here. Stone sculptures, sculptured steles, here beautifully carved stories that we do not understand. We can just try to decipher a few of the monuments here, signs and symbols that were carved in. A story is told, probably a story of the journey of man or the journey of settling down and starting a new life, whatever these famous pillars might tell us. Think about the time, think about the age more than 10,000 years ago with simple equipment, with simple tools like flint and groundstone. Here, such beautiful monuments were created with the simplest means you can think about. And there is more to expect, there is more to come. Here, so far, only 5 of these, presumably 18 round temples, these great open-air structures are excavated. So there's more to experience, more to expect, and probably another journey to tell in the not-so-distant future. Thank you very much for your attention.